Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Coco Nomad channel. And this is yet another weekly retrospective where I talk about my progress in my own projects and encourage you to follow along. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So in this past week, talk about what went well. The biggest thing that went well for me was my progress on a side project that I was working on for fun, based on some analytics on who is inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and I'm doing it based solely on their NBA career. So there's tons of people in Hall of Fame. There's hundreds and hundreds of contributors, coaches, players from different countries, collegiate, pro, men, women. But I really wanted to focus on a smaller data set, and I've been trying to explore creating machine learning models. Worked on a project last year that was based on actual physical movement, and I wanted to continue that work, but it's a little intensive, and I need a lot more data. So I wanted to try with something that's a lot simpler, which is just tabular data, and that was easily accessible. I could get out on the internet and find the data for NBA players and their careers, and so I could create a model. And so I've been working on that. So I have some hypotheses about what are the actual strongest contributing factors, whether someone is getting in, and then I want to use that to test against some people who aren't in. And there's a huge debate amongst some fans about players who should or shouldn't be in. So I wanted to use that as a test bed, and that's been going really well. I actually polled some players, some people in various social media groups that I'm in, Facebook and I'm forgetting the name, WhatsApp, WhatsApp as well, to find out and get some opinions. And it has varied. I mean, some of the responses, quite frankly, aren't even worth going into, but it's a lot of fun. It's a fun discussion. So I like it. I'm a big fan of like the sports debates, whether you're at the bar or the cafe or the barbershop, where people are talking about these kinds of things. So it's interesting to me. And so I'm looking forward to continuing. I actually will have a link to a couple of the videos I've already dropped, preliminary videos about this process, sort of explaining where I'm going, what I'm doing, and how this started. So if you're interested in following along, if you like sports, or you're just interested in data and analytics, then come along. It's just a way for me to learn. I'm actually trying to get better at learning, building machine models, and just get better at analytics, and basically kind of like a little way for me to kind of get into data science, because I know I'm not doing everything the right way, but this will force me to sort of improve these methodologies and processes along the way. And it's just for fun. I mean, I'm not even doing it for work. The second thing that's working really well is the learning log. I think I mentioned in the previous week's review that I am changing and adding a learning log separate from this sort of what I've learned section here, to more have a more formal journal for what I'm learning. And I capture everything from like inspirational quotes to sort of nuggets of information I learned from listening to podcasts or reading articles. And I'm separating that out, and I want to track it because I really want to look back at the end of the year and see these things that have really impacted me that I've learned. And it's been really useful. In fact, it led to me creating 4 short form YouTube videos on this channel this week alone. Just little nuggets that I picked up and I wanted to comment on, and I had something to say. So I was like, okay, that is it's really impactful. So far so good. It's really working well. What didn't go well? Well, the second week of client work, and I've made very little progress. And I know I said last week I was going to dedicate some time, and I think it's just I'm getting caught up in some of these other things that really are capturing my interest. And I know eventually I'm going to move away from client work. That is my goal with this channel. It is the goal with some of the consulting work that I'm launching and coaching. I just find other things a bit more interesting. But I do have a commitment to the client, and so we're sort of on a break this week. So it kind of worked out. A lot of people on vacation and/or moving, so there is some room this week, and it's a holiday weekend. So I'm not as worried about it last week. If you watched that video, and I was really more concerned about it than I am this week. This week, it's like, no, I knew kind of there was a little bit of padding this week, so I'd spend some time on this NBA Hall of Fame thing. So I was like, I've got a little bit of bandwidth there, so I'm using it for that. What have I learned? I think the biggest lesson I've learned, I can't pull all of the stuff in from the lessons learned log or learning log, because that's really a separate video that will probably take 20 minutes to half an hour alone just to go through all of that. But I wanted to capture 2 of the biggest things here. And the biggest one was I was listening to an interview with Annie Duke. And if you're a poker player, then you know she was like at the height of Hold'em poker. She's one of the big players, and but she does a lot of work in decision science and analytics and things of that nature. And she had an interview and she mentioned a practice that I thought was really interesting, and that is analyzing and looking at the kinds of decisions that you make and whether or not they have a long-term impact on happiness. And she used dating as a great example of that. And she's like, well, you don't have a lot invested in a single date. So there's you can date a lot, like have a lot of dates, and don't even be afraid to walk away from a date in the middle of it if it's not going well. You're just collecting these small data points. And then she also mentioned dating against type. So it's like we all have this idea of who we want to be like dating and seeing. And she strongly encourages doing the exact opposite of that because you don't know enough about what you don't know. And so you can learn a lot by making these decisions and going against type. So in the dating sense, yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that. But also in other things, like even in my business, making some new decisions and getting faster feedback. And some of those things are just making a quick YouTube video and just see how people respond, writing a quick blog post and seeing how people respond, launching a small product and seeing how people respond. Because over the long term, impact is very small. The long term, this is not necessarily happiness, but like the affecting the business in the long term. But I can get some faster answers and it minimizes the fear of making mistakes. So you just kind of keep making these same decisions over and over again and finding out very quickly and using that knowledge as you amass all of that to move forward. So that was the biggest lesson I learned this past week. And I thought it was really, really great and wanted to share it. The second one was a minor lesson, and that is in making these shorts, I made 4 videos. I thought they were all shorts. 2 of them were 1 second too long, and YouTube does not put them in the shorts. They have to be a minute or less. So I have to be mindful of that when I'm making the videos and make sure that I'm actually, keeping everything or even just going and editing it, trimming off at the beginning, a second or two at the beginning or end, just to make sure it falls under. I didn't do it with these two just because my whole point was just to make them quickly and get them out and just to see what people thought of this idea, if they have any comments or anything like that. But as I go forward, I'm really wanting to make sure it goes under the shorts and gets in the short shelf. I'm more mindful of making sure that probably going to make sure it's under 59 seconds just to be sure. So it's good practice of being short and getting to the point. So what still puzzles me? The biggest thing that's puzzling me right now is I'm in a big transition with what a lot of people call the second brain. I was never using that term. I was just introduced to it recently. I started watching some content from Ali Abdal, and I've been listening to and watching some stuff from Thomas Frank. And Thomas Frank is pretty popular in like the productivity circles. And I've traditionally used a couple of tools in my workflow. One of it is just Trello, which is my personal and business project management system. I do use other project management tools, but they tend to be driven by what my client is using. So if my client is using Pivotal Tracker, I use Pivotal Tracker on their project. If my client is using Asana, I use Asana on their project. And I just pull out a little bit of information, so pull into my personal workflow so that I can keep a tighter picture of what I'm doing with client work and my own projects and everything else that's going on. But recently I've started trying Notion. So I wanted to give it a try to see. And I have to say, I really like a lot about it. There's the concept of linking within the tool that I just was struggling with Trello. It's like I've been trying to do that, and I use a journal called Day One, and I like it because it's very simple. I can create a bunch of folders, and there's not any UI. When I'm ready to write, it's just a distraction-free writing environment. The challenge, though, is it doesn't do a great job of sort of linking between things that are related. And the thing about Notion that's really good is it gives you all of these different tools, and you can sort of compose what you want. So I can have a database along with a bunch of linked articles, and I've been using it for everything from putting together this Hall of Fame MBA analysis information to my planning as a digital nomad. Like I built a database and I have the list of the countries that I am planning to go to or have visited, and then I can drill into individual pages that have tons of information about that particular trip. So it's been a great tool. I do have some concerns about it in terms of like some things I don't like. Like I can't work offline, and I can do that with Trello, and I can do that with Day One. And it just syncs up later. So that's a huge sticking point with me completely switching over to a tool like Notion. But so far, it's been really, really good. So I'm just trying to streamline the way in which it works. So I'm still puzzled about that. And then finally, what will I do differently this week? Honestly, just based on that lesson from Annie Duke and just learning that is just release more content, take more chances, and get more no's. I reached out to Thomas Frank, actually. A friend of mine challenged me to just like, I had some questions, and I was just like, normally I would say, oh, this person's a person on the internet of note. I'm not going to bother them. They're never going to respond. And the fact of the matter is, like, what does it hurt? The worst they can say is no or just not respond. So I had some questions about how he set up some things. And I was like, hey, if you can give me some insight, that would help me. That would be amazing. And so I definitely want to do more of that. It's just like reaching out to people and not asking them to do stuff like, hey, look at my channel or give me this like, but more like process. I'm really into like, hey, how did you come to this point in setting up your business structure or setting up the way you approach your content and things of that nature? And if I can't easily find it in a video that they've already released, then it's just like, well, just send them an email and just ask and see how they do it. So that's it for this week. Please click like and subscribe if you want to see more of this. As I mentioned before, if you're interested in the basketball stuff, we're in the middle of the playoffs, so basketball fans know it's. In fact, I'm on my way to watch my Hawks play. We're finally in the playoffs after a long time, and I don't know how deep of a run this is going to be, but it looks pretty good against the Knicks right now. And then, of course, we got to play Philly, but that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother can of worms. Have an amazing week, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.